Imagine stepping through the grand gates of a house that has stood since 1796, its walls soaked in centuries of history, sorrow, and secrets. This is the Myrtles Plantation in Louisiana, a place where the past never truly dies and shadows seem to linger longer than they should. The air is heavy, thick with the weight of untold stories, and every creak of the floorboards feels like a whisper from another time. They say this plantation was once home to prosperous families, but prosperity often comes at a price. Here, the echoes of suffering remain, trapped in the very walls, trapped in objects, and, most disturbingly, trapped in the souls that never left. Among these restless spirits, the story of Chloe, a slave girl, chills even the bravest of hearts. They say she was punished unjustly, betrayed, and now her spirit roams the halls with a mixture of grief, anger, and longing. Visitors have claimed to see her, just as she was in life, wandering silently, her eyes heavy with sorrow. Her presence lingering in corners, where the sunlight refuses to touch. But the horrors do not end there. Look into the mirrors of the Myrtles Plantation, and you might catch a glimpse of faces that do not belong to the living. Faces that appear only when the room is empty, staring back with a gaze that pierces your very soul. Some say these reflections are the imprints of those who suffered here, the spirits of people who met tragic fates, trapped forever in the silvered glass. And Chloe's face, pale and haunting, often appears among them, as if warning anyone who dares to peer too long. Rooms that were once filled with laughter now echo with whispers, and footsteps can be heard where no one walks. Doors open and close by themselves. Candles flicker, as though unseen hands are passing by, and at night, a chilling breeze seems to carry voices from centuries ago. The plantation seems alive with memories, some sweet, but most dark, sinister, and desperate to be remembered. Even the trees outside hold their secrets. Ancient oaks and moss-draped branches sway, casting moving shadows that seem almost human. They are witnesses to events too terrible to be spoken aloud, guarding the pain, the anger, and the lingering spirits of Myrtles Plantation. Every visitor who dares to spend a night here is met with unease, a sense that unseen eyes are always watching, always waiting. Myrtles Plantation is not just a house. It is a prison for the souls of the past. Every creaking step, every flicker of a candle, every fleeting shadow reminds us that some histories refuse to remain buried. Chloe's spirit, and countless others, are reminders that the past, once stained with injustice and tragedy, refuses to fade quietly into memory. It waits. It watches. And if you are not careful, it may choose you to witness its eternal unrest. In the heart of Louisiana, nestled among thick moss-draped oaks and the slow, moving waters of the Bayou, stands a house that has witnessed more than any structure should endure. The Myrtles Plantation, built in 1796, is more than just an old home. It is a living relic, a vessel carrying the weight of centuries of joy, tragedy, and horror. Its walls, once newly painted and filled with laughter, now seem to breathe with the memories of the people who lived, suffered, and died within. Each brick and timber, weathered by time, holds the echo of footsteps long gone, voices that whispered secrets no living soul should hear, and the lingering cries of those who met their fate within its shadowed halls. When Myrtles Plantation was first built, it was intended to be a symbol of wealth and prosperity. The original owners wanted a grand home, a statement of their success, a place where their family could thrive in luxury. But even in the earliest days, whispers of misfortune seemed to follow. Workers on the plantation spoke of strange happenings. Tools misplaced. Cold drafts in rooms that had no windows. Shadows that moved against the natural flow of light. Many dismissed these as tricks of the mind, or the natural creaks of an old wooden house settling into the swampy soil beneath it. Yet, the stories grew, each retelling adding layers of fear, until the very name of the plantation became synonymous with something darker, something unseen. The house itself, with its grand columns and sprawling verandas, was built with care. Yet it almost seems to have been designed to hold secrets. Its rooms are vast, yet narrow corridors twist between them, creating blind corners where the mind imagines, no expects, something to appear. The floors, though polished, creak under the lightest pressure, as if warning those who tread upon them. Windows, framed with heavy shutters, reflect more than sunlight. They sometimes reflect the lives that have passed, capturing glimpses of figures who vanished decades ago, frozen in moments of terror or sorrow. It is said that even the colors of the walls, though faded with age, seem to shift when the wind blows just right, forming shapes that vanish the moment one tries to focus on them. The plantation was built during a time when the world outside Louisiana was changing. Yet within these walls, life followed a rhythm dictated by labor, wealth, and the social order of the time. Slaves worked the fields, their lives bound to the land and to the house itself. They moved silently through the shadows of the rooms, their presence almost permanent, their sorrows and resentments absorbed into the very wood. Families who owned the plantation lived in luxury, but even they could not escape the unease that the house seemed to breed. Guests would remark on the strange feeling of being watched, even when no one was near. Children claimed to see shadows move along the walls, to hear whispers calling their names, when no one else was in the house. It is this blend of human history and lingering sorrow that makes Myrtles Plantation more than just a historical house. It becomes a doorway to the past, a bridge between the living and the dead. The year 1796 may have marked its construction, but it also marked the beginning of a long, dark legacy. Within months of the house's completion, reports began to surface of accidents and mysterious illnesses. Servants fell ill with no explanation, and guests reported fainting, seeing strange figures in the corners of rooms, or hearing a child cry in the dead of night. Some believed the house was cursed, that the very land it stood upon was tainted by events long before the foundation was laid. Others whispered of revenge from spirits, of lives lost unjustly, of pain so deep that the earth itself refused to release it. Among the first accounts of haunting were the appearances of a young girl, her face pale, her eyes dark and sorrowful. This was Chloe, a slave girl whose life would become entwined with the plantation's infamy. Some say that her death was the catalyst for much of the restless energy that followed. Others suggest that she was only one of many spirits who never left, her presence merely the most visible among a growing host of shadows. Regardless of the truth, the stories are consistent. Those who stayed in the house after nightfall often reported seeing her wandering the halls, a tragic figure frozen in time, her footsteps silent, her gaze accusing yet pleading, as though reminding the living that the injustices of the past never truly disappear. Over the centuries, The house changed hands, yet the stories never ceased. Every owner, whether aware or skeptical, eventually encountered the inexplicable. Visitors describe the sensation of sudden coldness in rooms that should be warm, the flicker of lights without cause, and the unmistakable feeling of being observed. Some hear whispers carried on the wind, voices that call names, recount secrets, or replay moments of anger, fear, or despair. Objects move without explanation. Doors open and close, and mirrors, particularly those in the main hallway, reflect not only the living but the phantoms of the dead. It is as if the house itself has absorbed every emotion, every misdeed, every whisper, and refuses to release them. Even the land surrounding the plantation contributes to the sense of unease. The Bayou, with its slow, moving waters, shrouded in mist, seems almost alive, hiding things that move beneath the surface. The gnarled trees cast long, twisted shadows, and the moss that drapes from their branches sways, as if stirred by invisible hands. Walk the grounds after sunset, and the silence is overwhelming, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant cry of an owl. Yet within that silence, one often feels the presence of eyes watching from the darkness, of figures just beyond the edge of vision, waiting for intruders to step too far, to speak too loudly, to disturb the fragile boundary between the living and the dead. The very architecture of Myrtles Plantation seems designed to trap memories, to hold onto the echoes of history. Ceilings are high, creating long shadows that shift and dance, even in the faintest light. Hallways twist and turn, sometimes ending in dead ends or small, overlooked rooms where the air feels heavier. Floors creak under footsteps that seem to come from nowhere, and doors open into spaces that feel colder than the surrounding rooms. Windows reflect the outside world, but they also capture glimpses of those who walked these halls long ago. Slaves, owners, children, visitors, all frozen in expressions of terror, sadness, or longing. Throughout its long existence, Myrtles Plantation has become a magnet for curiosity, drawing historians, ghost hunters, and thrill seekers alike. Each person brings their own perspective, their own fear, yet most leave with stories of encounters they cannot explain. Some claim to hear Chloe's soft singing, a haunting lullaby echoing through the halls. Others report seeing faint handprints appear on foggy windows or doors that slam shut behind them with no discernible cause. Candles flicker even in the absence of drafts, shadows shift and lengthen, and whispers speak of events long forgotten, but never forgiven. The history of Myrtles Plantation is not just the story of a house built in 1796. It is the story of a place that has absorbed centuries of human emotion, of pain, and of unresolved injustice. Every brick, every floorboard, every shuttered window tells a story, some beautiful, some tragic, and some horrifying. To enter the house is to step into a living history, one that watches, waits, and interacts with those who dare to explore it. It is a history that refuses to be silent, that will not be ignored, and that continues to haunt the present in ways subtle and terrifying. And so, the Myrtles Plantation remains, as it has been for centuries, a place of grandeur tainted by sorrow, a home that promises comfort but delivers unease, a house that holds within its walls the echoes of lives lived and lives lost. The year 1796 may have marked its construction, but it also marked the beginning of an eternal story, one in which the living and the dead coexist uneasily, each day adding new layers to the haunting. each night deepening the suspense for those brave, or foolish, enough to remain within its walls after dark. Visitors who walk its halls, even today, cannot escape the feeling that the house is watching them in return, that the shadows move with purpose, and that Chloe and countless other spirits remain, ever vigilant, ever restless, ever waiting. The Myrtles Plantation is more than history. It is a living, breathing testament to the past, and it is a place where the boundaries between life and death blur, where suspense and fear are not just emotions, but permanent residents of the rooms themselves. Among the countless whispers that haunt the halls of Myrtles Plantation, none are as chilling, as tragic, or as terrifying as the story of Chloe. Her name is spoken in hushed tones, not only because she was a slave girl who suffered a cruel fate, but because her presence is said to linger, ever restless, a spirit bound to the house by grief, betrayal, and anger that the living cannot hope to understand. Some call her a ghost, others a revenant, and some claim that she is something older, something darker, an echo of injustice that refuses to fade with time. To hear her story is to walk into the shadowed corners of the past, to feel the weight of centuries pressing down, and to sense that she is watching even now. Chloe arrived at the plantation as a young girl, bound into servitude by a world that considered her life less valuable than the soil she tilled. She was known for her beauty, her quiet intelligence, and her skill with herbs and medicines, abilities that earned her a grudging respect from some and the jealousy of others. But in a household of privilege, the life of a slave girl was never safe. Chloe's days were filled with labor from dawn until dusk. Yet the true burden she bore was the invisible one, the constant awareness of her own fragility in a world that saw her as property, rather than a human being. It is said that Chloe's story took a darker turn when a conflict arose with the plantation's family. Some accounts claim she was accused of poisoning the matriarch's children, an accusation so severe that it would seal her fate forever. Others whisper that it was a tragic accident, a mistake born of frustration, fear, or misunderstanding, and that the real blame lay elsewhere. Whatever the truth, Chloe was punished in a way that seems almost designed to leave a mark on both the living and the dead. Her life ended violently, cruelly, and unjustly, and the plantation became her prison long after her death. From the moment she died, it is said that Chloe never truly left. She became something more than a memory, more than a ghostly presence. She became an eternal witness, a sentinel who roams the halls with a sorrow so deep that it chills the blood of anyone who comes near. Guests have reported seeing a young girl in the mirrors, a figure that appears suddenly, her reflection distorted by grief and rage. Her eyes, dark and penetrating, seem to bore into the soul, searching for recognition, for justice, for vengeance. And though her lips never move, the energy around her whispers of a life stolen, of a spirit denied peace. Many visitors to Myrtles Plantation describe encounters that defy explanation. Some awaken to the sensation of being watched, only to find a shadow in the corner of the room, unmoving yet undeniably present. Others have felt the cold brush of a hand against their shoulder, or the gentle tug of hair at the nape of the neck. Subtle, yet unmistakable signs of a spirit that refuses to be ignored. The most unsettling reports involve the mirrors. On quiet nights, when the house is empty, Chloe's face appears among the reflections of the room, sometimes smiling, sometimes twisted with grief or fury. Her presence in the glass is fleeting yet permanent, a warning to all who dare to look too long. It is not only the living who sense her presence. The house itself seems to respond to Chloe's restless spirit. Candles flicker in her presence, though no drafts exist. Doors open slowly and close with a creak, as though acknowledging her approach. Footsteps echo in hallways long abandoned, always measured, never hurried, never inhuman, but never those of the living. Some believe Chloe moves with purpose, retracing the steps she once took in life, perhaps reliving her own pain, or perhaps seeking someone to share her sorrow with. The plantation staff, both past and present, speak of her in careful tones, knowing that Chloe's spirit is unpredictable. She is said to be particularly active at night, when the house falls silent and the veil between the living and the dead grows thin. At this hour, the air turns heavy, carrying with it whispers of her life, her suffering, and her anger. Guests have reported the sudden smell of flowers, especially jasmine and roses, though no bouquet exists. Some claim it is Chloe's way of manifesting, using her knowledge of herbs and perfumes to mark her presence. Others insist it is a prelude to something darker, a warning, a herald of what is to come, or simply a reminder that she is always near. Stories of Chloe are often accompanied by cautionary tales. One visitor recounted sleeping in the main hallway, only to awaken to the sensation of small fingers pulling at her blanket. Another woke to see a reflection in the mirror that should not have been possible. Chloe's face, eyes wide with unspoken sorrow, staring directly at her from a distance of mere inches. Guests who have tried to speak to her report hearing soft whispers, almost imperceptible, calling their names, repeating phrases in a voice that is both childlike and infinitely ancient. It is as if Chloe is trapped between worlds, caught in a liminal space where she can observe the living, but cannot interact fully, save for fleeting, chilling gestures. The tragedy of Chloe's story is compounded by the knowledge that her death was unjust. She was a victim of cruelty, suspicion, and ignorance, and in death, she embodies the unresolved anger of a life stolen too soon. It is said that she sometimes reenacts the events that led to her demise, a silent warning to those who would underestimate the consequences of betrayal and injustice. Rooms where she once lived or worked are often reported as the most haunted, the energy thick with sorrow and something darker. A quiet, simmering rage that hints at the depth of her torment. Even the land surrounding the plantation bears witness to Chloe's presence. Some claim that when the wind rustles the moss from the ancient oaks, it carries her voice, sometimes soft and sorrowful, sometimes a warning of danger. Travelers report hearing laughter that turns suddenly into a scream, footsteps in the dirt where none should tread, and the faint glow of an apparition moving silently among the shadows. It is as if Chloe has claimed the plantation as her own, her spirit intertwining with the very soil, the trees, and the air itself. Despite the fear she inspires, there is also a tragic beauty to Chloe's haunting. She represents more than vengeance. She represents the persistence of memory, the weight of injustice, and the undeniable truth that some lives cannot be erased. Her story serves as a bridge between the past and the present, reminding all who enter Myrtles Plantation that the events of centuries ago continue to ripple through time. The plantation is not merely haunted for the sake of entertainment. It is haunted because the pain, suffering, and injustice that occurred here left indelible marks, and Chloe's spirit is the most visible manifestation of that legacy. Visitors often describe mixed emotions when encountering Chloe. Fear, certainly, but also sorrow, empathy, and a strange sense of connection. It is said that she does not harm indiscriminately. Rather, she reacts to those who are attuned to her story, those who acknowledge her presence, and the injustice she suffered. Those who disrespect the house, mock her, or attempt to provoke her often report terrifying experiences: objects thrown, doors slammed, and shadows that seem almost corporeal. But those who respect the history and approach with caution often experience subtler manifestations. Whispers in the dark, fleeting glimpses, or the inexplicable sensation of not being alone. Chloe's presence has inspired countless tales and legends, each growing in suspense and horror. Guests describe nights where they cannot sleep, where the walls seem to close in, and where the air feels heavy with unseen eyes. Mirrors, once simple reflections, become portals, revealing her face, sometimes smiling faintly, sometimes contorted in grief or rage. Candles flicker in acknowledgement. Doors creak as if opening for an unseen guest, and shadows twist unnaturally in corners where no light reaches. The plantation itself seems to pulse with life, an energy that is neither wholly evil nor wholly benign, but entirely connected to Chloe's unresolved fate. Even today, her story continues to unfold. Ghost hunters, historians, and curious visitors alike have come face to face with Chloe, each encounter adding to the growing tapestry of fear and fascination. Some leave terrified, swearing never to return. Others leave with a newfound respect for the past, humbled by the persistence of memory and the weight of injustice. But all who enter her domain are changed, carrying with them a sense of unease, a lingering chill, and the undeniable feeling that Chloe watches still. In the end, Chloe is more than a story. She is a presence, a shadow, a reminder of a life cut short, and a spirit denied peace. She haunts the Myrtles Plantation, not out of malice alone, but out of sorrow, anger, and a need to be remembered. Her footsteps echo through the halls, her gaze lingers in the mirrors, and her whispers drift through the air like the faintest perfume, impossible to escape. Those who enter her world are confronted with the harsh truth. Some souls cannot rest, and some histories refuse to be forgotten. Chloe is both tragic and terrifying, a haunting figure who embodies the dark heart of the Myrtles Plantation, and a story that will continue to chill the bones of anyone who dares to walk its shadowed halls after nightfall. The mirrors of Myrtles Plantation hold secrets few dare to uncover, for within their polished surfaces, the boundary between the living and the dead begins to blur. It is said that mirrors are more than mere reflections. They are windows, doors, and sometimes prisons, capturing moments in time and holding within them the lingering energy of those who have passed. At Myrtles Plantation, these mirrors are not ordinary. They are charged with centuries of sorrow, betrayal, and anguish, each one a silent witness to the tragedies that unfolded within the house. To look into them is not merely to see oneself. It is to risk seeing the eyes of the past staring back, unblinking and accusing. Many of the most chilling stories at Myrtles involve these mirrors. Guests and residents alike have reported seeing fleeting shapes in the glass, movements that vanish the instant they turn their heads. Shadows twist and curl within the reflections, forming shapes that seem almost human, yet impossibly distorted. Sometimes it is Chloe, the slave girl whose spirit has become entwined with the house, appearing as a pale, sorrowful figure, her dark eyes fixed upon those who dare to meet her gaze. At other times, it is more sinister, a face that does not belong to any living human, twisted with rage or grief, pressing against the surface of the glass, as if trying to break free. The mirrors are not passive in their haunting. They interact with the energy of the living. Those who enter a room with one of these mirrors may feel a sudden drop in temperature, a shiver crawling up the spine, or a weight in the chest that makes it hard to breathe. Some visitors report a sense of being watched, of eyes following them even as they move across the room. And when they glance into the mirror, the reflection may betray them. Subtle changes, a fleeting smile, or an extra shadow that does not belong to their body. It is as though the mirrors themselves are alive, conscious, holding within them the echoes of the past and the spirits who refused to leave. One of the most famous mirrors at Myrtles Plantation hangs in the main hallway, its surface dulled by age yet still unnervingly reflective. Legend has it that this mirror holds not just the reflections of the living, but the imprints of those who died on the plantation. Guests have recounted waking in the dead of night to see faces appearing in the glass, faces of children who no longer walk this world, of servants who vanished long ago, and of Chloe herself. Sometimes her image is faint, almost like a foggy shadow behind the reflection. Other times, it is horrifyingly clear, as if she is standing directly behind the observer, silent, yet demanding recognition. The effect of these haunted reflections is cumulative. Those who spend time in the plantation often report a growing unease, a creeping sense that the mirrors are watching, waiting, and recording. It is not merely the occasional glance that unnerves. It is the lingering presence, the way the images seem to follow the observer, altering subtly over time. A reflection may smile one day, frown the next, or appear to shift positions when no one has moved. Visitors sometimes feel compelled to turn away, yet the mirror's pull is magnetic, drawing attention, curiosity, and fear simultaneously. Some of the most chilling experiences involve mirrors that appear to have trapped the dead. Chloe, for instance, is said to be bound to the reflective surfaces, forced to reenact moments of her life and death endlessly. Her face may appear smeared with tears, eyes wide with pleading or anger, as if silently accusing those who caused her suffering. Others report seeing hands pressed against the inside of the glass, reaching out, grasping, trying to communicate something beyond words. Those who dare touch the mirror sometimes feel a sudden cold shock, or a brief sensation of fingers brushing their own. Though no one else is present, the mirrors also seem to react to the emotional state of those nearby. Fear, doubt, or disbelief seems to amplify the manifestations. A visitor who walks into a room skeptical of the supernatural may suddenly see shapes shift violently in the glass, shadows stretching unnaturally, as if the mirror is mocking their doubt. Conversely, those who approach with respect, acknowledgement of the spirits, and quiet caution often experience more subtle, almost sorrowful manifestations, faint images, brief glimpses, or the sensation of being observed without overt malice. In addition to Chloe, Other spirits are believed to inhabit these mirrors. Some claim to see the plantation's former owners, dressed in the fashion of centuries past, frozen in moments of fear or anger. Children who died too young sometimes appear in playful, fleeting images, disappearing when approached. Others report seeing the images of slaves who perished, their faces carrying the weight of oppression, fear, and unfulfilled lives. The mirrors thus serve as both a record and a warning, a visual reminder that the house holds the memories of everyone who has suffered within its walls. Even the physical placement of the mirrors seems intentional, as if the original builders unconsciously understood their power. Hallways lined with mirrors create corridors of reflection, doubling and tripling images, so that one can never be certain if the shadow seen is real or merely another reflection. In the evenings, candlelight flickers across the surfaces, casting moving shapes and making the reflections appear alive. Some mirrors face each other, creating the illusion of endless corridors filled with figures, a labyrinth of spirits that can disorient and terrify. It is not just the living who interact with these mirrors. The mirrors themselves seem to hold memories of past interactions. Guests report seeing their own reflections change subtly, showing expressions they were not making, eyes wider, lips trembling, as if the mirror is capturing the essence of fear itself. Others speak of whispers coming from the glass, soft murmurs that accompany a glance, fleeting words of warning, cries for help, or unintelligible chants that vanish as quickly as they arise. The experience can be overwhelming, leaving visitors shaken, their minds struggling to reconcile reality with what they have witnessed. Some researchers and paranormal investigators have attempted to understand the mirrors scientifically, installing cameras and monitoring equipment. Yet even modern technology seems insufficient. Cameras fail to capture what the human eye sees. Recordings show nothing unusual, even when multiple eyewitnesses swear to seeing ghostly forms. It is as if the mirror's power is specifically tuned to perception, visible only to those sensitive to the presence of the dead, reinforcing the sense that these reflections exist in a space between worlds, a liminal realm where the spirits of Myrtles Plantation can manifest at will. The most unnerving stories are those of people who have seen their own reflection move independently of them. Gestures that mimic, distort, or even anticipate their movements. Some visitors have reported seeing themselves appear in the mirror while standing elsewhere, their reflection acting as a conduit for the trapped spirits. Others have claimed that the mirror shows them moments from the past, historical scenes of Chloe's life, the suffering of slaves, or tragic accidents, played out silently, forcing them to witness events they were never present for. It is a haunting experience, one that merges history, memory, and the supernatural in a way that leaves a permanent impression. Despite these terrifying accounts, many are drawn to the mirrors. Some come seeking proof of the supernatural, some out of curiosity, and others seeking to connect with Chloe, to understand the injustices of her life. Few leave unchanged. Most report a lingering unease, an inexplicable chill, and the knowledge that the mirrors do not merely reflect, they remember. They watch, and they may even interact. Some swear that Chloe's image seems to follow them long after they have left, appearing in ordinary mirrors elsewhere, a reminder that the spirit's reach is not confined to the walls of the plantation. In the end, The mirrors of Myrtles Plantation are not simply objects, they are gateways, portals, and prisons all at once. They hold the echoes of centuries, the suffering of countless souls, and the restless presence of Chloe and others who met tragic fates. To look into them is to glimpse a world beyond comprehension, to confront the weight of history, and to sense that the past is never truly gone. They remind us that what is reflected is not always reality, that what is seen may be a memory, a warning, or a spirit trapped in time, waiting for acknowledgement. And so, the mirrors remain, silent yet alive, watching all who enter the plantation. They serve as conduits for the spirits, as reminders of the injustices endured, and as vessels for the unresolved emotions that have festered over centuries. Those who dare to meet their reflection in these haunted surfaces may never see themselves in the same way again. For the mirrors of Myrtles Plantation do more than reflect, they expose, they accuse, and they summon the shadows of the past, holding within them the haunting beauty and terror of Chloe and the countless others whose lives ended too soon within these walls. The rooms of Myrtles Plantation are unlike any ordinary spaces. On the surface, they appear grand and historic, with polished wooden floors, high ceilings, and heavy draperies that sway gently with the Louisiana breeze. But look closer, and the ordinary veneer fades to reveal a world dominated by echoes, shadows, and a persistent sense of being observed. Within these walls, the air is thick, heavy with centuries of human emotion, grief, rage, sorrow, and despair, all woven together into an invisible fabric that clings to every corner. To step into a room in this house is to feel time shift, to sense the past pressing in on the present, and to realize that the walls themselves are alive with memory and perhaps even malevolence. It begins subtly. A visitor might first notice the stillness of the air, how even in the middle of summer, a room feels unnaturally cold. Candles may flicker despite the absence of wind, and small noises, a floorboard creak, a distant sigh, can send shivers racing down the spine. The sound of footsteps is perhaps the most unnerving, as they are never quite predictable. They move slowly, deliberately, sometimes pacing a hallway, and sometimes pausing, only to resume again in the quietest moments of the night. Guests often report standing in a room, frozen with fear, listening as the steps echo across the floor. Yet when they turn to see who is there, the room is empty. There is no one to account for the measured rhythm, no sound of a person breathing, no trace of movement beyond the faintest whisper in the shadows. The whispers themselves are another hallmark of these haunted rooms. They are not loud, nor are they fully coherent, yet they carry a weight that demands attention. Often, the whispers begin softly, almost imperceptibly, as if the walls themselves are breathing secrets into the ears of anyone who will listen. Names may be called in hushed tones. A child's laughter may trail off into an eerie silence, or phrases may repeat with maddening irregularity. Don't go. Leave now. Why are you here? These voices are not confined to one room, but seem to travel, echoing from corner to corner, defying the natural laws of sound. Some who have stayed in the plantation for the night claim that the whispers grow louder in the darkest hours, around 2 or 3 in the morning, as though the spirits become restless when the living are most vulnerable. Rooms that were once lively are now repositories of memory and sorrow. The dining room, where laughter and conversation once filled the air, is now haunted by the faint clinking of silverware and the rustle of unseen chairs. Guests have reported seeing the faint outlines of figures sitting at the long table, shadows stretching unnaturally under candlelight that has long since gone cold. One visitor recounted leaving the room to fetch water, only to return and see the chairs slowly shifting, as though invisible hands were preparing the table for guests who no longer exist. The effect is subtle, terrifying, and inescapable. The house is alive with echoes, and it expects the living to notice. Bedrooms, too, carry their own horrors. Those who have slept within the plantation often awaken to the sensation of being watched. Shadows linger near the foot of the bed, moving slightly when the observer blinks. Some have reported the faint brush of a hand against their skin, or the feeling of hair being tugged at the nape of the neck, though the room is empty. Objects, too, betray the presence of unseen entities. Candlesticks are toppled, doors open and close on their own, and personal items are inexplicably moved. These are not random occurrences. There is a deliberate quality to them, as if the spirits are interacting with the living, demanding recognition, or perhaps replaying moments from their own lives. The hallways of the plantation are particularly chilling. Long and narrow, they twist unpredictably, lined with heavy mirrors and dark portraits, whose eyes seem to follow the intruder. Steps echo unnaturally here, and shadows shift with a life of their own. It is in these hallways that Chloe, the haunted slave girl, is said to make her presence most felt. Visitors have reported seeing a pale figure at the end of the corridor, stationary at first, only to vanish suddenly when approached. Others claim to hear her soft singing, a lullaby that is sweet yet unbearably sad, echoing through the halls and blending with whispers from unseen mouths. The sensation is one of being pursued yet watched, as if the past itself is stalking those who dare to walk these paths. It is not just the visible or audible that unnerves visitors. The emotional weight of the rooms themselves is palpable. Many have described entering a space and feeling an overwhelming sense of despair, an invisible pressure on the chest that makes breathing difficult. Some experience sudden panic, nausea, or cold sweats, as if the very air carries the imprint of suffering endured long ago. These experiences are not uniform, but seem tailored, affecting each visitor differently. Those who are skeptical may dismiss them as imagination. Yet even the most hardened cynics often leave shaken, haunted not by what they saw, but by what they felt. The plantation's history amplifies the horror of these rooms. Every creak, every whisper, is a reminder of the lives that once moved through these spaces. Slaves who labored endlessly, children who died too young, families torn apart by betrayal and misfortune, all have left traces that refuse to fade. Some rooms are particularly active because of the intensity of past events. A nursery, once filled with the cries of children, is now a hotspot for ghostly activity, tiny footsteps, soft giggles, and the occasional wail that pierces the stillness. Visitors report seeing toys move on their own, rocking chairs sway despite the absence of wind, and shadows that appear to mimic the movements of the living. Even in areas that seem mundane, the supernatural manifests. The kitchen, where meals were once prepared and shared, is said to retain the residue of human activity. Pots and pans clatter without cause, drawers open and close, and the faint smell of long, extinguished fires lingers. Some claim to see the specter of a cook, stirring an invisible pot, while others report hearing whispered conversations in voices long gone. The sense of being observed is constant. Even the most mundane tasks become laden with unease. The floors themselves are conduits for the past. Wooden boards groan under footsteps, yet the sounds often do not match the number of people present. Visitors have reported standing in a room with no one else inside, only to hear the unmistakable pattern of someone pacing in the hallway outside. When they investigate, the hallway is empty. Yet the echoes continue, persistent, deliberate, and unnerving. It is as if the house has stored the movements of past inhabitants, replaying them endlessly, intertwining them with the present. Some visitors have claimed to hear conversations, full dialogues, emanating from empty rooms. These are not random murmurs but coherent exchanges, often filled with anger, grief, or fear. One guest recounted hearing a heated argument between Chloe and her master. The echoes so vivid that the words seemed to resonate through the walls. Another described hearing a child scream, a sound so piercing that it left them physically shaking for hours afterward. These auditory manifestations are layered with history, offering a haunting glimpse into lives lived long ago, but never forgotten. The intensity of these experiences often peaks at night. Darkness seems to amplify the activity, and those who linger after sunset frequently report the most terrifying events. Shadows lengthen unnaturally. Whispers become more insistent, and footsteps grow louder, as though the house is asserting its presence. Some guests have seen doors open by themselves, as if inviting or warning them, while others have felt the unmistakable sensation of being followed, with the weight of invisible eyes tracking every movement. The boundary between the living and the dead seems thinnest at these hours, allowing Chloe and other restless spirits to manifest in ways that defy explanation. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the rooms at Myrtles Plantation is their unpredictability. Activity can occur anywhere, at any time, and no two experiences are alike. Some report gentle touches or fleeting glimpses, others intense terror or full apparitions. The house is a living entity, responding to the presence, emotions, and perhaps even the intentions of those who enter. Some have claimed that the spirits can sense fear, disbelief, or disrespect, and will intensify their manifestations accordingly. Others suggest that acknowledgement, respect, or curiosity may elicit more subtle, sorrowful displays, allowing visitors to witness the depth of grief and injustice that permeates the plantation. Despite the fear it inspires, there is also a strange allure to these haunted rooms. They are vessels of history, memory, and unresolved emotion, offering a direct connection to lives long past. To spend time in them is to confront both the beauty and horror of human experience, joy, sorrow, cruelty, and love, all frozen in the very air, walls, and floors of the plantation. Those who emerge from these rooms often do so changed, carrying with them a sense of awe, fear, and a lingering recognition that the past is never truly gone. The rooms of Myrtles Plantation are not merely haunted, they are alive, interactive, and deeply personal. They hold the echoes of centuries, the traces of suffering and injustice, and the restless presence of Chloe and countless others whose lives ended tragically. Every creak, every whisper, every shadow is a testament to the enduring power of memory, and to the fact that some stories refuse to be forgotten. Visitors who step into these rooms are not merely entering a house, They are stepping into a world where the past continues to exist, where the dead are never truly gone, and where suspense, fear, and the unknown are constant companions. The land surrounding Myrtles Plantation is far more than a backdrop for its haunted history. It is an active participant in the haunting, a silent, watchful presence that has absorbed centuries of human sorrow, violence, and secrets. The plantation does not stand alone. It is cradled by the slow, moving waters of the Louisiana Bayou. Its edges lined with ancient oaks, draped in heavy moss, cypresses rising like sentinels, and thick undergrowth that seems almost to move with a mind of its own. Even during the brightest hours of the day, there is a weight to the air here, a tension that cannot be explained by heat or humidity alone. The land itself remembers, and it remembers every act of cruelty, every whispered secret, and every life lost within and around the plantation. Those who approach Myrtles soon realize that the boundary between the house and the land is almost imperceptible. The Bayou, with its murky waters and shifting reflections, seems to mirror the haunted interior, hiding shapes that are not fish, frogs, or the natural wildlife, but perhaps something far more sinister. Travelers along the edges of the water report strange sensations, a tugging at the mind, a fleeting glimpse of figures just beneath the surface, and the occasional sound of splashing that comes without explanation. Some claim to have seen faces in the water, twisted in anguish or sorrow, appearing only for an instant before dissolving into ripples that seem almost to erase their presence. The swamp is not silent. It breathes, it watches, and it whispers in ways that both attract and repel the curious. The trees themselves are equally unnerving. The moss that drapes from the branches moves in rhythms that defy the slightest breeze, swaying as if in response to unseen forces. At night, shadows stretch long and twisted across the muddy ground, forming shapes that resemble human figures, reaching, grasping, or waiting. Visitors have recounted walking among the oaks, only to feel unseen hands brush against them, cold and insistent, as if the trees themselves are alive, carrying the memories and energy of all who suffered nearby. The gnarled roots seem almost to move beneath the feet, tripping the unwary, or forming natural shapes that seem eerily deliberate, perhaps marking graves long forgotten, or echoing the tragedies that have soaked into the soil. It is said that Chloe's presence is not confined to the house. The land surrounding the plantation is an extension of her haunting, a space where her sorrow and anger linger in every shadow, in every rustle of leaves, and in every bend of the bayou. Guests walking at night often report hearing soft, mournful singing carried on the wind, a lullaby, sweet and haunting, that seems to rise from the earth itself. Sometimes, it is accompanied by footsteps crunching in the underbrush, or the distant sound of children laughing, only for the laughter to abruptly turn into a chilling cry. The plantation grounds, in this sense, act as both stage and witness, capturing not only the events of the past, but also the lingering emotions that the land itself refuses to release. Visitors who linger near the old slave quarters often describe an overwhelming sense of grief, as though the very soil has absorbed the suffering of those who lived and died there. The air feels thick and heavy, almost suffocating, as though the weight of injustice itself presses down upon anyone who enters. Some have reported shadows flitting between the trees, glimpsed in peripheral vision, vanishing when looked at directly. Others have felt sudden chills, cold drafts that snake through the area. Though the Bayou is still, and the wind absent, every sound, croaks, splashes, whispers of wind, is amplified by the imagination. But those who have returned multiple times insist that the experiences are consistent, tangible, and undeniably supernatural. The plantation's gardens, once vibrant with life, now have an eerie quiet, a sense of frozen time that is almost unnatural. Some plants grow in strange patterns, as if avoiding certain areas, or bending toward the house, as though drawn to it. Visitors report that during the night, faint shapes can be seen among the flowers and shrubs, figures crouching, kneeling, or wandering slowly, disappearing the moment they are noticed. The land remembers the toil of slaves, the tragedies of children and adults alike, and it seems to manifest these memories in subtle ways, through movement, temperature changes, and the inexplicable sense of being watched. Even the air seems charged with energy. There are places where the mist rises unnaturally early, curling across the ground in shapes that appear deliberate and almost sentient. Some claim that the fog can form into figures, vague, shadowy, yet undeniably human in form, that vanish when approached. Others report the sensation of being brushed past by invisible presences, accompanied by faint whispers that seem carried not on the wind, but from the soil itself. These phenomena are not limited to one part of the grounds. They occur throughout the property, suggesting a pervasive, unseen consciousness that observes, remembers, and perhaps judges all who enter. The pond near the edge of the property is a locus of especially strange activity. Guests describe sudden ripples that appear without wind, the surface breaking as if something beneath is moving with intent. Some have claimed to see figures rising from the water, reflections of faces twisted with sorrow or rage, only to vanish when looked at directly. These apparitions are sometimes accompanied by the faint smell of decay, damp earth, or flowers long past their bloom, blending with the natural scents of the Bayou, in a way that is disorienting and eerie. To linger here after dark is to feel a presence beneath the surface, something patient, waiting, and aware of the living intruder. Even the animals on the ground seem affected. Dogs refuse to enter certain areas, birds fly in unusual patterns, and insects gather or disperse in strange ways. The natural rhythms of life appear distorted, as if the land has been altered subtly by the energy that permeates it. Those attuned to these patterns often report an acute sense of unease, a warning that the plantation grounds are not neutral territory, but are charged with the emotions of centuries, reacting to both the living and the spectral. The historical weight of the land adds another layer of terror. Before the plantation existed, the area was home to untold numbers of people, some lost to natural disaster, others to violence or disease. The soil, the trees, and the water have absorbed the echoes of all who came before, layering them atop the tragedies that would unfold within the house itself. It is a palimpsest of suffering and memory, where each generation adds to the haunting, ensuring that the land itself cannot be ignored. The plantation does not merely exist on the land, it is inseparable from it, and its ghostly manifestations extend into every swampy edge, every moss-laden branch, and every shadow cast across the Bayou at night. Many visitors have reported being followed by unseen presences as they walk the grounds. Steps are heard behind them. Whispers drift through the trees, and the sensation of eyes upon them is nearly constant. Yet, when they turn to confront these presences, nothing is visible. It is as if the land itself has become a participant in the haunting, a witness to events that cannot be observed by the eye alone, but are recorded in the very energy of the earth. The trees, water, and soil carry these imprints, replaying them in subtle, terrifying ways, ensuring that the horrors of the past are never forgotten. Even during the daylight hours, the haunting is apparent. Visitors describe an unnatural stillness, a quiet that is almost oppressive, broken only by the faintest sounds that seem amplified in the emptiness. Shadows appear to move against the direction of the sun, shapes form among the moss, and reflections shimmer in the water that appear to be something other than the natural world. The energy is ever present, a constant reminder that the land surrounding Myrtles Plantation is not neutral. It is a sentinel, a witness, and an active participant in the haunting. Chloe's spirit, in particular, is said to move freely across the grounds. Some claim to have seen her wandering near the Bayou, a pale figure in the mist, searching for someone, something, or perhaps merely reliving her own suffering. Others have felt her presence in the gardens, near the old slave quarters, or under the oaks, sensing her sorrow and anger pressing against their consciousness. The land amplifies her haunting, carrying it outward so that even those who stay outside the house itself may feel the chilling touch of the past. In the end, the land surrounding Myrtles Plantation is as haunted as the house itself. The Bayou, the moss, draped oaks, the gardens, and even the soil are silent witnesses to centuries of human experience, both joyous and tragic. They hold within them the memories of Chloe, the other slaves, the plantation owners, and the countless visitors who have felt the power of this place. To walk these grounds is to be enveloped by history, sorrow, and a lingering presence that defies explanation. Every rustle of leaves, every ripple in the water, every shadow cast at dusk is a reminder that the land remembers, that it watches, and that it is as alive with ghosts as the house it surrounds. To enter the land of Myrtles Plantation is to step into a realm where nature itself is haunted, where every tree, every branch, every droplet of water holds the memory of lives lost, and where the spirits, led by Chloe, extend their reach beyond the walls of the house. The plantation is not merely a home. It is an entire world suspended between the living and the dead, a place where suspense, terror, and history intermingle, and where every visitor is forced to confront the unsettling truth that the land, like the house, never forgets, never releases, and never allows its ghosts to rest. At Myrtles Plantation, the fear that grips visitors is not always sparked by visible figures or tangible objects. Often, it is the unseen, the intangible, the shadows that do not exist, the presences that make themselves known only through the mind and body, that terrifies the most. These invisible forces do not announce themselves with clanging doors or flickering lights. Instead, they creep silently, insinuating themselves into every thought, every movement, every heartbeat. To encounter the unseen presence of Myrtles Plantation is to confront fear in its purest form, a terror born of anticipation, imagination, and the knowledge that one is not alone, even when the eyes see only empty rooms. From the very moment one steps onto the property, the sensation begins subtly. There is a weight to the air, a pressure that settles on the chest, as though the atmosphere itself is saturated with the echoes of suffering. Even in the brightest daylight, visitors describe a creeping unease, an instinctive feeling that something watches from just beyond the edge of vision. It is in these moments that the psychological terror begins to take root. The mind senses the presence before the eyes can perceive it, interpreting subtle cues, shifts in temperature, faint whispers, or even the slight rustle of leaves, as confirmation that the past is not gone, that something unseen lingers. Inside the plantation, the effect intensifies. Rooms that seem ordinary and quiet are rarely so. A visitor may sit in what appears to be an empty parlor, only to feel the unmistakable sensation of eyes upon them. The hairs on the back of the neck stand on end, a cold trickle runs down the spine, and the room feels alive with something that cannot be seen, touched, or explained. These are not random feelings, but deliberate interactions from spirits who exist in a plane beyond the living, their presence registering only as emotion, sensation, or the faintest pressure on the air. Chloe, the plantation's most famous spirit, is often associated with these experiences, but she is not alone. Countless others inhabit the house, their unrest manifesting as tension, dread, and the creeping realization that one is never truly unobserved. Psychological fear is compounded by the knowledge of the plantation's history. Visitors are aware that the house has witnessed centuries of suffering, slaves whose lives were stolen, children who died young, families torn apart by cruelty, betrayal, and violence. This awareness primes the mind, heightening sensitivity to the slightest anomaly. A floorboard creak is no longer a structural sound. It becomes a footstep approaching from a shadowed corner. A whisper of wind through the shutters is no longer nature. It is a voice, carrying messages from beyond the grave. In this way, the unseen presence manipulates perception, blurring the lines between reality and imagination, creating a terror that is both deeply personal and profoundly universal. Many visitors describe sensations that defy explanation. Some report feeling sudden chills, localized in a way that suggests proximity to a presence unseen. Others feel light touches on their shoulders, arms, or even legs, though no one is there. Some experience the sensation of being followed, of footsteps echoing in empty hallways or rooms. Occasionally, these presences interact in more sinister ways, moving objects just enough to be noticed, closing doors softly behind a visitor, or causing items to shift subtly in alignment with the observer's path. These small but deliberate actions serve to heighten awareness, confirming that something watches, even when nothing is visible. The psychological impact of these unseen forces is often cumulative. A visitor may begin their stay feeling merely uneasy, but over time, the constant sense of being observed, followed, or interacted with can become overwhelming. Panic sets in not because the threat is immediate or visible, but because the mind cannot reconcile the knowledge of presence with the inability to identify it. Fear becomes anticipatory. Every creak, every whisper, every shadow triggers a heightened response, until the visitor is consumed by the sense that the unseen is all-encompassing, inescapable, and aware. Many report hearing whispers or voices that seem to come from the corners of rooms or down hallways. These are often incoherent at first, fragments of sentences, murmurs of names, unintelligible syllables. But over time, some visitors swear they understand the meaning. Some voices seem angry, others mournful, and a few are terrifyingly playful, taunting the living with knowledge only the dead could possess. These auditory hallucinations are not products of the imagination alone. They are often reported by multiple individuals independently, suggesting that the unseen presence communicates in ways tailored to the observer, heightening fear through direct psychological manipulation. Visitors have also described experiences of being watched while moving through the house. This sensation is difficult to explain. A room may be empty, yet a palpable tension presses upon the body, a sensation that the air itself is aware of the observer's presence. Some describe sudden bouts of vertigo, nausea, or disorientation, as if the unseen presence distorts reality around them. Others feel cold spots, sudden drafts, or even changes in humidity localized to specific areas of the room. These manifestations are subtle yet profoundly unsettling, reinforcing the idea that the plantation is alive with the memories and intentions of those who never left. Even outside the house, the unseen presence lingers. The grounds surrounding Myrtles Plantation are thick with history, energy, and observation. Walking through the Bayou, the gardens, or under the moss-draped oaks, visitors often report feeling eyes upon them, hearing soft footsteps that cannot be traced, or sensing movement in the underbrush. The land itself seems aware, charged with emotion, and attuned to the presence of the living. Chloe, the most famous of the plantation spirits, is said to roam freely here, her sorrow and anger amplified by the open spaces. But the land also hosts countless other restless entities, all unseen yet profoundly perceptible, waiting to interact with those who trespass upon their memories. The psychological terror of the unseen is magnified by the unpredictability of its manifestations. There is no pattern to its appearances, no warning, no logic. A visitor may feel a hand brush their arm once, and then again several minutes later, or hear a whisper in one room, and footsteps echoing in another. The living cannot anticipate the movements of the dead, nor can they reason with them, which amplifies the sense of helplessness. In this way, the unseen presence at Myrtles Plantation achieves what no visible threat could: a complete domination of the mind and emotions, instilling fear through anticipation, uncertainty, and the ever-present knowledge that one is being watched. Some experiences border on the hallucinatory. Visitors have reported seeing fleeting shadows at the edge of vision, glimpsing forms that vanish when directly observed, or feeling a presence in the room even when alone. Others have experienced auditory phenomena that are impossible to locate: voices calling names, phrases repeating, laughter or sobbing emanating from walls, floors, or the very air. Even those who enter skeptically find themselves unnerved, their rational minds challenged by sensations they cannot fully explain. The unseen presence operates in the liminal space between reality and imagination, exploiting the fear that exists in the unknown, in the unobserved, and in the unseen. Interestingly, the intensity of the psychological fear seems to respond to the emotional state of visitors. Those who enter with skepticism often report sudden, intense experiences, as if the spirits are forcing acknowledgement of their presence. Visitors who approach with respect, curiosity, or empathy often experience subtler, yet equally unsettling, manifestations. This suggests that the unseen presence is not random but selective, interacting with the living in ways that heighten terror while also revealing the deep-seated sorrow, anger, or unfinished business of the spirits themselves. One of the most unnerving aspects of the unseen presence is its persistence. Guests who leave the plantation often report feeling the effects long after departings, a lingering sense of unease, dreams filled with whispers, and the sensation of being watched in their own homes. Some claim that Chloe's influence extends beyond the property itself, that her sorrow, grief, and anger are so deeply imprinted on the land and the air that it reaches out, crossing boundaries, and continuing to haunt those who have witnessed it. Even the most mundane activities become fraught with terror. Sitting in a parlor, writing, or simply walking through a hallway, visitors report the sensation of invisible hands brushing against them, a shadow darting in peripheral vision, or a sudden inexplicable chill. The human mind, attuned to detect subtle anomalies, becomes hyper-sensitive under the influence of the unseen. Every noise, every movement, every flicker of light is magnified, interpreted as proof of the presence of spirits who are unseen yet undeniably real. At Myrtles Plantation, the unseen presence is not confined to any one spirit. Although Chloe remains the most prominent figure, the cumulative effect of centuries of restless souls creates a psychological landscape in which the house, land, and air are saturated with emotion. Fear is heightened not by visual stimuli alone, but by the anticipation of interaction. The unseen pressure of eyes upon the visitor, and the mind's own attempt to make sense of phenomena that defy explanation. In this environment, terror becomes inescapable, a constant companion that heightens every heartbeat, quickens every breath, and stretches every moment into a suspenseful ordeal. Ultimately, the unseen presence at Myrtles Plantation demonstrates that the most profound terror does not always require visibility. It thrives in anticipation, in perception, and in the knowledge that the dead are observing, interacting, and sometimes punishing. The human mind reacts to the subtle, the intangible, and the inexplicable with a power that mirrors the horror itself. To experience the unseen at Myrtles is to confront fear in its purest, most intimate form, an omnipresent, invisible force that touches every thought, every movement, and every emotion, leaving the visitor forever changed by the encounter. Myrtles Plantation is not simply a house, it is a repository of centuries, a vessel of memory, and a canvas upon which the tragedies of the past have been painted with an unforgiving hand. The hauntings that pervade this plantation are not random nor singular. They are layered, cumulative, and deeply entwined with the historical traumas that unfolded on this land. To understand the full scope of the hauntings, one must grasp that the plantation is alive with memory. Not the gentle recollections of history books, but the raw, visceral echoes of suffering, injustice, and death that have been absorbed by every wall, floorboard, and shadowed corridor. These are layered hauntings, each one adding to the tapestry of fear, despair, and supernatural tension that defines the Myrtles today. The first layer begins with the institution of slavery itself, a dark period that set the foundation for the plantation's haunted nature. Chloe, the young slave girl whose spirit remains one of the most famous, is emblematic of this era. Her life was one of servitude, constrained by laws and societal norms that treated human beings as property. Each act of cruelty, whether overt punishment or subtle deprivation, left an imprint not just on the bodies of those who endured it, but on the very energy of the house. the rooms where slaves labored, the quarters where they lived, and even the grounds they walked carried with them the weight of suffering. When one walks through the plantation today, it is impossible to separate the house from this history. The echoes of oppression remain palpable. A whisper in the air, a cold spot in a room, a pressure that seems to press upon the chest. Layered atop this foundational trauma is the violence, mistrust, and betrayal that characterize the lives of the inhabitants of the house. Chloe's story, often told as a tale of revenge or tragedy, is in reality a microcosm of the broader injustices that played out within the plantation. Whether her death was accidental, a punishment for a perceived crime, or a deliberate act of cruelty, it represents the convergence of fear, suspicion, and unchecked authority. Her spirit, bound by these circumstances, refuses to release itself from the plantation. It is said that she walks not only as a ghost, but as a reminder of injustice, replaying her sorrow and anger for anyone who enters the house. Her presence is an ever-present layer, haunting bedrooms, hallways, and mirrors, demanding acknowledgement of the wrongs done to her. Beyond Chloe, the plantation is haunted by the spirits of others who suffered tragic fates within its walls. Children who died young, perhaps from illness, neglect, or accidents, leave subtle but persistent imprints. Guests often report hearing faint cries, giggles, or the soft thumping of tiny footsteps in areas where no living child remains. These manifestations are not malevolent, necessarily, but they are a poignant reminder that loss lingers, and that the plantation is saturated with grief that does not fade with time. Each child, each servant, each family member who suffered leaves a layer upon the existing tapestry of haunting, creating an intricate network of presences that interweave with one another, forming a dense, almost tangible atmosphere of history and suspense. Historical trauma manifests in more subtle ways as well. Rooms seem to retain memories of events that occurred within them. The creak of a floorboard echoes steps that once belonged to someone long dead. A chair tilts slightly, echoing the moment it was pushed by an unseen hand. The faint scent of flowers or tobacco lingers in the air, inexplicably present despite the passage of centuries. Visitors report that rooms feel differently depending on the intensity of the past events that occurred there. In bedrooms where death or punishment took place, the air is heavier, the temperature colder, and the sensation of being observed is nearly overwhelming. The plantation functions as a living archive of trauma, each layer building upon the last, each haunting reinforcing and amplifying the ones beneath it. The very land around the plantation contributes to these layered hauntings. The Bayou, with its dark waters and thick underbrush, is not merely scenic, it is part of the memory of suffering. Many slaves who labored on the plantation may have attempted to escape or hide in the surrounding swamps, only to succumb to the treacherous landscape. Their fear, desperation, and sorrow remain imprinted upon the land itself. Trees, moss, and water all carry these memories, forming an external layer of haunting that reaches beyond the house. Visitors report a pervasive sense of being watched, even while walking through the grounds. Footsteps echoing where no one treads, and whispers drifting on the wind. It is as if the plantation's history cannot be contained within the house alone. The land itself is a participant in the ongoing trauma, amplifying the spectral presence. The layers of haunting are not limited to individual experiences. They are cumulative, building a psychological pressure that weighs upon anyone who enters. The mind of a visitor begins to register subtle anomalies. A flickering candle, a shadow that moves independently, a whisper from an unseen source, and these small events accumulate, creating an overwhelming sense of dread. Each layer of history, slavery, betrayal, illness, death, adds context and intensity to the phenomena, making it impossible to experience any single haunting in isolation. Chloe's sorrow is felt alongside the faint laughter of children, the anger of betrayed servants, and the grief of families torn apart. The result is a multi-dimensional tapestry of fear, where the visible, the audible, and the psychological converge. Layered hauntings also interact with the living in unpredictable ways. Skeptics often find themselves more affected than believers, as the unseen energies seem to respond to doubt and fear. A skeptical visitor may enter a room and suddenly feel the pressure of a gaze, the subtle tug of a hand, or a whisper that cuts directly into consciousness. Those who acknowledge the spirits, or approach with respect, may experience a different layer, perhaps a fleeting vision of Chloe, or a gentle reminder of the sorrow that permeates the plantation, rather than an overtly frightening encounter. The layered hauntings are not static. They adapt, respond, and interact with the emotional and mental state of the living, making each experience deeply personal and profoundly unsettling. Mirrors, hallways, and rooms all play a role in these layered hauntings. Mirrors often capture the reflection of the present, while simultaneously revealing the shadows of the past, doubling the intensity of the experience. A hallway may echo with footsteps that belong to multiple timelines, overlapping the past with the present. Bedrooms, where death and sorrow were most concentrated, act as focal points, intensifying the emotional resonance of the layered spirits. Visitors walking through the plantation cannot help but feel the combined weight of all these experiences. The visible, the unseen, the audible, and the psychological, each layer amplifying the others, creating a profound and relentless sense of suspense. The historical narrative of Myrtles Plantation is intertwined with the paranormal, meaning that the hauntings are never random, but directly connected to the traumas experienced over centuries. Every instance of death, fear, or suffering leaves a residue that persists. The spectral presence of Chloe is intertwined with the land, the house, and the other spirits, creating a feedback loop of horror that cannot be easily disentangled. Even modern events, such as visitors' experiences, become part of the ongoing accumulation, reinforcing the idea that the plantation is alive, aware, and eternally haunted. Layered hauntings also include the psychological echoes of unacknowledged grief and injustice. Visitors often report feelings of guilt, unease, or sorrow without understanding why, as if the plantation is channeling the emotional weight of centuries into those who enter. The past presses upon the present, and the ghosts of Myrtles are never content to remain dormant. They insist upon recognition. These hauntings are not simply visual or auditory. They are existential, touching the deepest fears and moral consciousness of anyone who walks the plantation grounds. In the end, the historical trauma and layered hauntings of Myrtles Plantation illustrate a haunting that is far more complex than simple ghost stories. The spirits that linger are not mindless apparitions. They are carriers of memory, of injustice, of sorrow and rage that refuse to dissipate. Each room, each mirror, each step on the grounds is infused with the energy of those who lived, suffered, and died here. Visitors experience not only the supernatural, but also the cumulative weight of history itself. The echoes of centuries of human pain, layered one upon the other, forming an invisible architecture of terror that makes Myrtles Plantation a place unlike any other. To enter Myrtles Plantation is to step into a living chronicle of suffering, memory, and unrest. The hauntings are layered, complex, and deeply personal, affecting every visitor in unique ways. Each creak, each whisper, each shadow is a thread in a tapestry woven over centuries, and to confront it is to confront, not just ghosts, but the unresolved pain of history itself. Chloe, the children, the slaves, the families, they are all part of a dense, intertwined network of presence that refuses to let the past be forgotten. The plantation, in this sense, is not merely a haunted house, it is a monument to history, a vessel for unresolved trauma, and a place where suspense, fear, and the echoes of human suffering converge with terrifying potency. Myrtles Plantation has earned a reputation not only because of its dark history, but also because of the countless first-hand experiences reported by visitors, guests, and paranormal investigators. The accounts of those who have spent time within the house and on its grounds are chilling, layered with suspense, and often defy rational explanation. Many visitors come with curiosity or skepticism, prepared to dismiss the stories of ghosts and hauntings as folklore. Yet even the most rational minds often leave unsettled, shaken, and unable to ignore the strange events that seem to occur with alarming consistency. The experiences reported here are not isolated, they form a pattern, a collective testimony that the plantation's spectral presence is both real and persistent. Some of the earliest reports come from overnight guests who stayed in the main house. One couple, upon entering their bedroom, noted a sudden drop in temperature, a cold that seemed localized to one corner of the room. As they unpacked, they reported hearing the soft creak of floorboards behind them. Turning, they saw no one, but the sound persisted, moving rhythmically across the room. Then came the whispers, indistinct at first, like the rustling of fabric or the murmur of a conversation, but soon recognizable as human voices, soft and mournful, calling out names and phrases that seemed both personal and unnerving. The couple fled the room, unable to rationalize the chilling auditory experience. Another guest recounted an encounter in the hallways of the plantation. Walking to the bathroom in the dead of night, she felt the unmistakable sensation of being followed. The floorboards creaked in rhythm with her steps, yet there were additional creaks behind her, as if someone, or something, was pacing in parallel. When she turned to confront the presence, the hallway appeared empty, dimly lit by the moonlight filtering through the windows. Still, she felt eyes upon her, a watchful, oppressive gaze that seemed to weigh down on her chest. Moments later, she reported seeing a shadow flicker at the far end of the hallway, elongated and indistinct, disappearing the instant she blinked. The encounter left her shaken, unable to sleep for the remainder of the night. The most frequently reported phenomena involved the figure of Chloe herself. Visitors describe seeing a young girl, dressed in period clothing, her presence faint and ethereal, standing silently in doorways or at the ends of hallways. Some claim she appears in mirrors, her reflection visible, for only a fleeting moment, before vanishing. Others report sudden chills when alone in a room, or the sensation of a small hand brushing against their shoulder. Chloe's presence is described as both sorrowful and intense, a ghost bound by past injustice and grief. She is the most tangible of the plantation's spirits, yet even she is part of a larger network of unseen presences, many of which are less identifiable, but equally disturbing. Paranormal investigators have also documented a range of phenomena at Myrtles. Using tools such as EMF meters, digital recorders, and infrared cameras, many have recorded anomalies that cannot be easily explained. EMF spikes often occur in areas historically associated with tragedy, such as the bedrooms, slave quarters, or the hallways where violent events reportedly took place. Some investigators have captured unexplained sounds, footsteps, whispers, and cries on audio recordings, even when no living person was present. Infrared cameras sometimes show fleeting orbs of light moving independently of any source, or shadows that do not correspond to the movements of known occupants. These documented experiences add credibility to the stories of ghostly encounters, demonstrating that the hauntings are not merely figments of imagination, but phenomena that leave measurable traces. Many visitors report tactile experiences that defy explanation. A common theme involves sudden, localized cold spots, sometimes accompanied by the sensation of being touched. Guests have described the feeling of hair being tugged at the nape of the neck, arms being lightly grasped, or an invisible hand pressing against their back. These experiences are often sudden, intense, and impossible to rationalize. They are particularly unnerving because they combine physical sensation with the psychological fear of the unseen, creating a visceral, inescapable terror. Another frequently reported phenomenon is the movement of objects without human intervention. Doors open and close on their own. Chairs tilt or rock, and personal items are inexplicably displaced. Some visitors have recounted placing objects in specific locations, only to find them moved hours later, often in ways that suggest deliberate interaction. These interactions, subtle but deliberate, give the impression that the spirits are observing, responding, and sometimes communicating with the living. The fact that these movements occur consistently across different visitors and time periods suggests a pattern, reinforcing the idea that Myrtles is alive with restless energy. Auditory experiences are also particularly common. Visitors report hearing footsteps, doors creaking, soft whispers, and even disembodied voices calling out names or phrases. Some have heard full conversations, often emotionally charged, replaying events from the past. A notable example involves a guest who reported hearing the argument of Chloe's master and another servant, voices sharp and angry, echoing down the hallway. Despite investigating, no one else was present, and the sound ceased when the guest left the area. Others have heard children laughing, only to have the laughter abruptly cut off by a sudden, chilling scream. These auditory manifestations are unsettling because they are coherent, recognizable, and seemingly purposeful, creating suspense and reinforcing the reality of the hauntings. Mirrors remain another focal point for visitor experiences. Many have reported seeing fleeting reflections that do not match their movements, or figures standing behind them that vanish when turned to face directly. One guest recounted looking into a mirror and seeing Chloe's face staring back at them, pale and sorrowful. her eyes dark and accusatory. The reflection disappeared when they blinked, leaving only the ordinary room behind. Mirrors at Myrtles are not merely reflective surfaces, they act as portals or windows, capturing residual energy and replaying moments of past events. This adds another layer to the suspense, as the living can never be certain whether what they see is real, a memory, or a trick of perception. Even the land itself plays a role in visitor experiences. The grounds, Bayou, and gardens are reported to carry echoes of past events. Guests walking at night have felt unseen hands brush against them, heard footsteps in the underbrush, or sensed movement from the mist rising over the swamp. The natural elements, wind, water, trees, seem to amplify these experiences, as though the environment itself participates in the haunting. This creates a sense that the entire plantation, not just the house, is alive with memory and supernatural activity, ensuring that the suspense and fear continue even outside the walls. Not all experiences are terrifying in a traditional sense, yet they are no less unsettling. Some visitors report a persistent feeling of being watched, a sense of anticipation, or a cold, oppressive energy that seems to cling to the body and mind. Others describe moments of empathy or sorrow, as though the spirits are reaching out, conveying the depth of their suffering, rather than seeking to frighten. These experiences demonstrate the complexity of the hauntings at Myrtles. They are not merely about scares, but about the emotional weight of history, grief, and injustice. Group experiences further highlight the intensity of the haunting. Multiple visitors have reported synchronized occurrences, lights flickering simultaneously, doors opening for several people at once, or whispers heard by more than one individual. Such events suggest that the hauntings are not subjective hallucinations, but interactive phenomena, responding to the presence of living humans and creating a collective sense of suspense and dread. Even skeptics often find these experiences difficult to dismiss, particularly when multiple observers report the same anomalies in real time. Some of the most chilling reports involve prolonged stays. Visitors who spend multiple nights at the plantation often experience cumulative effects, increasing unease, persistent cold spots, recurring shadows, and auditory phenomena that escalate in intensity. They describe feeling a constant presence, a weight on the mind and body that cannot be escaped. Even after leaving the property, many report lingering effects, dreams filled with whispers, sudden chills in ordinary rooms, and the sense of being followed by unseen eyes. This lasting impact demonstrates the potency of Myrtle's paranormal energy and the layered nature of its hauntings. The combination of first-hand experiences and documented paranormal activity has made Myrtles Plantation a focal point for researchers, skeptics, and enthusiasts of the supernatural. Each account, whether auditory, visual, or tactile, contributes to the overall narrative of the plantation as a site of genuine paranormal phenomena. The repeated and consistent nature of these reports, across decades and different types of visitors, reinforces the notion that the haunting is not merely folklore, but a living, interactive reality, shaped by both the spirits of the past and the emotional states of the living. Visitors' experiences at Myrtles Plantation illustrate that fear is not always about what is seen, but what is felt and anticipated. The subtle touches, the whispers, the shadows that move just beyond sight, and the inexplicable movement of objects all combine to create a profound sense of suspense. The psychological impact of these experiences is as significant as the tangible manifestations, leaving visitors with a lingering sense of unease, dread, and fascination. It is this intricate layering of direct interaction, emotional resonance, and historical memory that makes Myrtles Plantation a uniquely haunting location, a place where the living and the dead coexist in a tense, fragile, and suspenseful balance. At Myrtles Plantation, the spirits are not merely passive remnants of history, they are active, aware, and capable of interacting with the living in ways that are profoundly unsettling. The most notorious among them, Chloe, is said to move beyond the boundaries of the visible, making her presence felt in both subtle and dramatic ways. Visitors frequently report encounters that leave them questioning their senses, sanity, and the very nature of reality itself. These interactions are not random, but seem guided by emotion, memory, and intent, creating a sense of suspense and horror that lingers long after leaving the plantation. Chloe's presence is most commonly reported in the rooms she once inhabited and throughout the hallways of the main house. Many guests describe the sensation of being followed by a small, silent figure, feeling her sorrow and anger pressing against their consciousness. Some have seen her out of the corner of their eyes, a fleeting, pale figure that vanishes when looked at directly. Others report the sensation of being lightly touched or brushed by an invisible hand, often accompanied by sudden chills or goosebumps. These interactions are unsettling precisely because they are physical yet invisible, tangible yet impossible to explain. The living cannot identify a source, and the unseen nature of the contact amplifies psychological terror. Mirrors in the plantation act as both a medium and a conduit for Chloe's manifestations. Many visitors have reported seeing her reflection in a mirror, sometimes standing directly behind them, her face pale, sorrowful, and filled with a silent accusation. The reflection may linger for only a second before fading into the ordinary room, but the impact is lasting, leaving observers with a profound sense of unease. In some cases, her image has been caught in photographs, faint and transparent, adding to the evidence that her presence is not simply imagined. These mirror encounters combine visual horror with the anticipation of being watched, creating an inescapable suspense that tightens the chest and quickens the pulse. Chloe is not the only spirit reported to interact with the living. The plantation hosts a variety of ghostly presences, each with its own history and motivations. Guests often report hearing whispering voices, footsteps, or soft giggles in rooms where no one is present. Some of these voices appear to be in conversation, replaying events from the past, while others call out names or issue warnings. These interactions are deeply psychological, heightening fear by exploiting the mind's natural instincts for survival and anticipation. Visitors are forced to confront not only the presence of ghosts, but also the emotional weight and unfinished business they carry. Some interactions are tactile in nature. Guests have recounted feeling invisible hands, tugging at clothing, stroking hair, or gently pressing against their shoulders or back. These touches are often fleeting, yet persistent enough to create panic and confusion. In some cases, visitors have described sitting in chairs, only to feel the sensation of weight pressing down, as if someone unseen were occupying the space beside them. Other tactile experiences include objects moving subtly, such as doors opening or closing, drawers sliding, or furniture shifting, all in a manner that seems deliberate, almost as if the spirits are communicating through physical action. Auditory interactions are also frequent and unnerving. Many visitors report hearing footsteps that follow them through hallways, yet when they turn, no one is there. Others hear whispers or faint conversations that cannot be attributed to any source. One common phenomenon is the repetition of names. Chloe or other spirits may call out a guest's name repeatedly, growing louder or more insistent as the visitor attempts to ignore it. Some guests have reported hearing emotionally charged exchanges, such as arguments, cries, or pleas for help, echoing from rooms that appear otherwise empty. These auditory interactions heighten suspense, creating an environment where the unseen is omnipresent, and fear builds from anticipation rather than overt attack. Visitors who stay overnight often experience the most intense interactions. As darkness falls, the spirits seem to become more active. Guests report seeing figures moving in hallways, shadows that dart across walls, or faint, glowing lights that appear and vanish without explanation. Some have woken in the middle of the night to find the temperature in their room dropping suddenly, accompanied by the sensation of being watched. Others have felt hands tugging at the bed sheets, felt a presence pressing against them, or heard footsteps pacing the floor. The timing and unpredictability of these events create a heightened sense of suspense, leaving visitors on edge and unsure of when or where the next interaction will occur. The interactions are not always frightening, though fear is nearly always present. Some guests report feeling a sense of sadness, empathy, or sorrow, as if the spirits are attempting to communicate their suffering rather than instill terror. Chloe, in particular, is often described as embodying grief, anger, and injustice. Her presence carries the emotional residue of her tragic life, and visitors frequently sense this intensity, even in the absence of visual or auditory phenomena. These emotionally charged interactions are subtle yet deeply affecting, creating a lingering unease that continues to influence thoughts, dreams, and perception long after leaving the plantation. Some of the most chilling encounters involve simultaneous sensory experiences. Guests have reported feeling cold spots, hearing footsteps, and seeing shadows all at once, reinforcing the reality of the unseen presence. One notable case involved a visitor walking through the hallways late at night. The air suddenly grew icy. A whisper called their name from behind, and a shadow passed across the wall. The visitor froze, paralyzed by the simultaneous sensory onslaught, and the experience remained etched in memory as one of the most terrifying moments of their life. The combination of tactile, auditory, and visual interactions amplifies suspense to an almost unbearable level, leaving visitors convinced that the spirits are aware, deliberate, and capable of influencing multiple senses at once. The unpredictability of these interactions is central to their terror. A guest may experience an encounter in one room, only to find another, completely different phenomenon in the next. Shadows may appear in one hallway, only to vanish when revisited. Whispers may follow a visitor from one room to another, shifting in tone, volume, and intent. Objects may move subtly in one area, yet violently in another. This lack of pattern ensures that suspense is maintained at all times, and that the fear of the unknown remains a constant companion. Some interactions suggest intentional communication. Visitors have reported objects being moved in ways that appear to respond to questions, or lights flickering in a pattern that seems to acknowledge presence. One guest reported asking aloud if Chloe was present, only for a chair to shift slightly as though responding. Others describe the feeling of being herded or guided through the house, as if the spirits are leading visitors along predetermined paths. These interactions are unnerving because they suggest intention and intelligence on the part of the spirits, reinforcing the idea that the plantation is alive with consciousness beyond the living. Even brief encounters leave a lasting impression. Visitors frequently describe recurring dreams, feelings of being watched in their own homes, or the sensation of Chloe or other spirits remaining nearby long after they have left the plantation. These residual interactions suggest that the spirits are not bound to the physical space in a conventional sense, but carry their presence forward, creating a haunting that extends beyond the immediate experience. The combination of immediate encounters and lingering influence ensures that the impact of these interactions is profound and enduring. The cumulative effect of these interactions is an environment of constant suspense. Visitors never know when or where a spirit may manifest, how it may interact, or what sensory channel it may exploit. The unpredictability heightens psychological tension, making every creak, shadow, or breeze a potential sign of the unseen. Chloe and the other spirits create an atmosphere in which fear is never far away, yet is rarely overtly violent, relying instead on anticipation, subtle manipulation, and emotional resonance to terrify. In conclusion, the interactions between Chloe, other spirits, and the living at Myrtles Plantation are complex, layered, and profoundly affecting. They involve tactile, visual, and auditory phenomena, emotionally charged experiences, and psychological manipulation, all of which create a sustained sense of suspense and fear. The spirits are not passive remnants of history, but active participants in the lives of those who enter, asserting their presence in ways both subtle and dramatic. These interactions are central to the haunting of Myrtles, demonstrating that the plantation is a living repository of memory, emotion, and unresolved trauma, where the past continues to reach into the present with chilling intensity. Mirrors at Myrtles Plantation are far more than mere reflective surfaces. They are portals, windows, and witnesses to the tragedies that have unfolded within its walls. To step before one is to enter a space where the boundary between the living and the dead becomes fragile, where the ordinary act of seeing oneself can transform into a confrontation with the supernatural. Visitors have long reported experiences that defy rational explanation, fleeting figures appearing behind them, faces that emerge only for a moment before fading, and reflections that do not mimic their movements. Mirrors at Myrtles are charged with centuries of grief, anger, and unresolved trauma, serving as both a medium and a magnifier for the spirits that linger, most famously Chloe. The first unsettling phenomenon that many visitors encounter is the sensation of being watched through mirrors. A guest may be brushing their hair or adjusting clothing, only to feel a presence observing them from behind the glass. When they turn, the room appears empty, yet the feeling persists, a pressure on the mind and chest that is almost suffocating. This unseen gaze is unnerving precisely because it is invisible. The mind searches for a source, finds none, and is left in a state of heightened anticipation. The suspense builds as visitors wonder if the reflection will reveal more than just themselves, or if the eyes in the mirror belong to someone or something that should not exist. Many visitors have reported seeing Chloe's figure within mirrors. She appears as a pale young girl, often dressed in the style of the late 18th or early 19th century, her face sorrowful and eyes dark, full of emotion that transcends words. These sightings are brief, sometimes only a fraction of a second, yet they leave an indelible impression. The experience is disorienting. One may glance up to see the ordinary reflection of the room, only to witness Chloe, standing silently behind them in the mirror, staring, before vanishing as though she were never there. The fleeting nature of these glimpses heightens the suspense, forcing visitors to question whether they truly saw something or merely imagined it. Reflections in mirrors are not always limited to Chloe. Some guests report seeing shadows or forms that move independently of any living occupant, shapes that appear and vanish without warning. At times, these reflections replay events from the past, showing people walking through hallways, children playing in the parlor, or servants moving about in the rooms where they once toiled. These residual images are often indistinct, like faded memories. Yet they are undeniably present. Visitors report feeling drawn into these visions, their curiosity mingled with fear, as though the mirror offers a glimpse into another world, one that exists alongside their own, and is saturated with the sorrow and anger of those who came before. The psychological impact of these mirror phenomena cannot be overstated. The mind naturally expects a mirror to replicate reality, and when it does not, the result is deep unease. Shadows may stretch incorrectly, figures may appear where none exist, and movements may fail to align with the observer's own. This subtle distortion of expectation creates a creeping suspense, a tension that escalates with every glance. Visitors describe moments of paralysis, their senses acutely attuned to every flicker, reflection, or change in light, anticipating the next glimpse of the supernatural. The mirror becomes not just a reflective surface, but a stage for fear itself, a tool that blurs the line between the living and the spectral. In addition to mirrors, Myrtles Plantation hosts other forms of supernatural glimpses that catch visitors unawares. Shadows moving at the edge of vision are perhaps the most common. They flit along walls, dart across hallways, or linger in corners, visible only for a fraction of a second before vanishing. These fleeting shapes are often associated with Chloe or other spirits. Their brief appearances, enough to send shivers down the spine and ignite the imagination. The unpredictability of these glimpses intensifies the suspense. Visitors never know when a shadow will appear, or whether it is merely a trick of the eye or a genuine encounter with the unseen. Visitors have also reported seeing figures in reflections where no mirrors exist. Windows at Myrtles sometimes behave like mirrors at night, catching the faint glow of moonlight and reflecting shapes that are not present in the room. 1. One guest recounted looking out a window into the courtyard, only to see the reflection of a young girl standing behind them. When they turned, the room was empty, and the window reflected nothing unusual. This phenomenon suggests that the boundaries between reflection and reality are fluid, and that the spirits of Myrtles can manipulate these surfaces to create glimpses that unsettle, confuse, and terrify. Photographs taken at the plantation frequently capture anomalies associated with mirrors and reflections. Visitors have documented faint orbs of light, blurred human forms, or semi-transparent figures that appear where none were present. Some of these images show Chloe or other spirits reflected alongside the living, suggesting that these entities can interact with multiple planes simultaneously. While skeptics may attribute such images to dust, lens flare, or photographic error, the consistency and recurrence of these anomalies lend credibility to the reports and amplify the suspense for future visitors. The suspense of mirrors is often compounded by the history of the plantation itself. Guests are aware of the tragedies that unfolded here, the suffering of slaves, the deaths of children, and the injustices that Chloe endured. This knowledge primes the mind to perceive anomalies, heightening sensitivity to subtle cues. A flicker in the glass, a shadow at the periphery, or an indistinct reflection can trigger intense emotional reactions, as the living unconsciously recognize the echoes of trauma encoded in the environment. The mirrors, therefore, serve as both a psychological amplifier and a supernatural conduit, merging history, emotion, and fear into a tangible experience. Even brief glimpses can provoke profound responses. Guests report heart-pounding terror, shortness of breath, and a creeping sense of vulnerability. One visitor described seeing Chloe in a mirror while brushing her hair. Her reflection twisted slightly, and Chloe's eyes seemed to bore into her own, conveying both sorrow and silent accusation. The moment lasted less than a second. Yet the visitor was left shaken, trembling, and unable to sleep for the remainder of the night. Such encounters illustrate the potency of supernatural glimpses at Myrtles, even fleeting. They create lasting psychological effects that extend far beyond the immediate experience. Mirrors can also facilitate interactions. Some visitors have reported that after seeing a figure, shadows, or Chloe herself, other phenomena occur: objects move, doors close, or faint voices whisper in response. It is as if the reflection acts as a bridge, allowing spirits to reach through and interact with the physical world. Guests often find themselves holding their breath, uncertain whether the next movement will be harmless or malevolent. The suspense of anticipation is relentless. Every glance becomes charged with potential. Every mirrored surface a possible doorway to the unseen. The plantation's hallways and staircases further enhance these experiences. Mirrors positioned at strategic angles reflect not only the physical room, but also glimpses of hallways and rooms that lie beyond direct sight. Visitors report seeing figures move across these reflected spaces, disappearing before they can step into them. Shadows may appear to follow them, and the sensation of being watched is intensified by the reflection's subtle distortions. These interactions create a layered fear, where the mind perceives multiple realities simultaneously, unsure which is the present, which is memory, and which is the supernatural. Glances into mirrors at night are particularly unsettling. The dim light, elongated shadows, and quiet of the house combine to create an atmosphere of heightened awareness. Guests often report feeling that the mirror is alive, responsive to their presence, and capable of revealing things hidden from the ordinary eye. Eyes are said to follow them, reflections may shift independently, and fleeting images may appear and vanish in the blink of an eye. The suspense is continuous. The living cannot predict the next appearance, cannot control the reflection, and cannot escape the lingering sense of being observed. Some of the most chilling experiences involve layered glimpses. A visitor may see Chloe in a mirror, then notice a shadow flicker in the corner of their eye, and finally hear a whisper or footstep behind them. These simultaneous encounters overwhelm the senses, creating an immersive horror that engages sight, sound, and emotion. The mind struggles to process the layers of interaction, heightening suspense and anxiety, and leaving the visitor deeply unsettled long after leaving the house. Mirrors at Myrtles do more than frighten. They provoke introspection and confrontation with the past. Many visitors report that seeing Chloe or other spirits in a reflection evokes empathy, sorrow, or a chilling recognition of injustice. It is as if the mirrors not only show the unseen, but also reveal the emotional and moral weight of the plantation's history. The glimpses are more than apparitions. They are reminders of suffering, tragedy, and unresolved grief that persists through time, engaging the living in a dialogue with the dead. In the gardens and outdoor areas, windows and glass surfaces also capture supernatural glimpses. Visitors report seeing fleeting figures or faces reflected in panes of glass, water puddles, or even the surface of the Bayou. These outdoor reflections create suspense by extending the hauntings beyond the house itself, reminding visitors that the spirit's reach is not confined to walls or rooms. Shadows flit among the trees. Figures appear in the water, and reflective surfaces multiply the sense of being observed and followed, creating a continuous, immersive experience of the supernatural. Ultimately, mirrors, reflections, and supernatural glimpses at Myrtles Plantation create a form of terror that is intimate, immediate, and unforgettable. The phenomena engage both the senses and the mind, combining visual, auditory, and psychological elements to sustain suspense and fear. Visitors are confronted with the living echoes of history, the presence of restless spirits, and the unsettling knowledge that even something as ordinary as a mirror can reveal what lies beyond the veil. Each encounter, brief, fleeting, and often ambiguous, adds to the layers of suspense, ensuring that the plantation's haunted reputation is not simply legend, but a deeply felt reality for those who dare to look into the reflective depths. As we step away from the shadows of Myrtles Plantation, we realize that this is more than just a house. It is a living archive of sorrow, injustice, and restless spirits. Every creaking floorboard, every cold draft, every fleeting glimpse in a mirror tells the story of lives interrupted, of tragedies that refuse to fade, and of spirits like Chloe who remain bound to this world, watching, waiting, and whispering their tales to those brave enough to listen. The plantation reminds us that the past is never truly gone, that history leaves marks not only in books, but in the very walls and air that surround us. If you ever have the courage to visit, know that you are entering a place where the line between the living and the dead is thin, where every glance and every sound could be more than it seems, and where the unseen is never truly absent. Myrtles Plantation is not merely a haunted house, it is a testament to the lives, emotions, and unresolved stories of those who came before us, and the echoes of their presence linger long after the last visitor departs. So, if you have been captivated, terrified, or mesmerized by the stories of Chloe, the whispers, and the spectral shadows of Myrtles Plantation, make sure you join us on this journey into the unknown. Share this story with your friends. Let them feel the suspense and fear of a place where history and horror intertwine. And subscribe to our channel so that you never miss another glimpse into the world's most haunted and mysterious places. Remember, the spirits of Myrtles are always watching, and the next time you hear a whisper, see a shadow, or catch a fleeting reflection, you might just be looking into the eyes of history itself. Dare to witness it, share it, and keep the stories alive.